Hey guys, Lytane here, and for a very long time now, I've skipped a lot of what most people would call AAA titles. They just don't really interest me as much, and I would rather play an indie game. I think it's because they have a different feel and value to them, a little bit more love and a little bit less polish usually. So let's take a look at one called The Girl and the Robot. The Girl and the Robot was made by Flying Carpet Games and was released in 2017 on Steam and Wii U. It was later ported over to the PS4 and the Xbox, but I can't find out any info of when that actually happened. This was a Kickstarter funded game. That's when people pledge money on a project long before it's even made in order to help fund and create it. Shovel Knight, Mighty Number 9, and Bloodstained were also Kickstarter games. It's a great platform to generate interest for sure. In this game, you play as a girl, and she has been locked away in a tower by an evil queen. She escapes and finds a robot that she can control using her medallion. They work together exploring the castle and trying to figure out what's going on. But what is going on? What happened to the king? Why is the queen evil? What's up with that medallion? But most importantly, who was the crazy architect that built this place? Like, look at it, it's utterly insane. The Girl and the Robot is an action platformer game where you control both the girl and the robot. You can only use one of them at a time, and each can do different things. The girl can jump and is more nimble. She can also crawl into small places and activate certain switches. The robot can push heavy objects and fight. He also gets a bow and arrow to use for some of the puzzles, and there's a few more little things that each character can do, but that's mostly it. Most of the game will have you exploring the different rooms of this crazy castle, figuring out some of the puzzles and getting into fights. Most of the time you will split up the two characters, each with their own part of the puzzle, which makes them a little bit more interesting, but they are all pretty basic in general. Personally, I would play as the robot most of the time because he's the faster character and he could fight. Fighting has you dodging attacks and trying to land your own. Both you and the enemy have the same weak spot on your back, and if you manage to score a hit there, it does major damage. And you best get rid of them too, because they will relentlessly follow you until they die. Also, they can kill the girl in a single hit, or maybe they're catching her, it depends on the animation, and then you'll have to restart at the last checkpoint. Both the puzzles and the fighting mostly work, and they are both very basic. The fighting is bad. If you have to fight multiple enemies at least, you can easily get stun locked and killed. What's worse is that when you do the critical hit on the back, you enter an animation and the enemies can still hit you during it. So there's a high chance that you'll get killed or at least badly hurt whilst doing this. So only use this maneuver when fighting one-on-one. There are a few levels in this game, all of which are very different in tone and feel. I like the variety that it offers here, and the sewer being my favorite area of the game. This also lends to some of the puzzles as well, but like I said, they are all pretty basic. Mostly you will explore an area with the robot, get to the point where he can't continue, switch to the girl, crawl through a space, and then land on a switch or something to open the way. There are a few puzzles which require you to switch back and forth as well, like the girl will see a code on the wall and the robot has to put it in on his side of the puzzle. There are a few combat puzzles as well, which can be very frustrating and fun at the same time. Like in the maze, you must use the robot to clear a path and then use the girl to sneak to the other side, opening the way. But this is where all of my frustrations in the game came from. This one maze level. The maze isn't even complex, though it is large and it does have a little bit going for it. The design is alright, but the execution of it all isn't. The enemies will spawn in most of the same places, but there are a few that are random. This makes it very frustrating to get through as the girl dies in one hit, and I spent more time in this one section than I did at any other in the game, all due to those random spawns, because sometimes I would get to a point and the girl would just die because an enemy spawned where it didn't before. There are a few cutscenes in the game which do the job of showcasing the story pretty well. They are limited and they don't have any voice acting, which was probably done so they didn't have to do any translations when they released the game internationally. And I don't mind this choice. I like the world that it is building and I like the way that the story is conveyed. My problem with these cutscenes is that every time the shot changes, there is a small black pause on the screen, and it only lasts a few frames, but it is so jarring and ugly, and it really causes me to wig out. I don't get why they did this and why they would intentionally make it like this. Maybe they didn't understand how to render a video. I'm not sure, or maybe it was an oversight. I'm just not sure. It feels like the game is blinking for me. That's the best way to describe it, and I utterly hate it, and I just wish it would stop. The cutscenes would be fine if they didn't have these weird black pauses. There are also two boss fights in the game. There is an evil queen who notices that you have escaped and wants to stop you, and these fights are meh. The first requires a little fighting and puzzle solving, which is good on paper, but once again the execution just isn't very good. The execution is so bad that quite a lot of people get stuck during this fight because they don't realize that they need to distract the queen with the girl before you can use your robot to attack her evil robot. So the last thing I want to talk about here is spoilers, so skip ahead to this time if you don't want to know about how the game ends. So that last boss fight is an absolute joke. It has some platforms that you need to maneuver on, and you need to avoid some of the explosive robots that are spawning endlessly before you then go and fight the queen. So you take control of the girl first, and you need to get her to one of the platforms that is all by itself in order to keep her safe from the exploding enemies. It is so easy to do because once you control her, all of the enemies stop moving. There is literally no threat here. Once you're on that island, you switch over to the robot, you walk up to the queen and try and dodge the exploding bad guys at the same time, and then you hit her 3 times. Boom, that is the first part of the fight. You do that 3 times in total, and you've won. This fight is so boring and it's so broken because the enemies are fairly stupid and they also get stuck on the corners and on the edges of the platform, so they just don't do anything. It's so badly constructed. Now once you beat the queen, you see the final cutscene, and I thought we would see her die and we would become the queen ourselves, or something along those lines, but nope. The queen lives and she uses her magic to push the girl off the throne, but luckily the robot catches her, oh thank god, only for the queen to then stab him in the back, potentially killing him and letting the girl fall. That's when the game ends. That's it. Apparently, this is part 1 of a series of games, but you wouldn't have known that going in because it isn't really written anywhere. I had no idea before I finished the game, but who knows, maybe there will be a sequel, and I would play it because I really need to know what's going on. So that's good, but damn, that ending is such a letdown and is so frustrating. In my opinion, I think The Girl and the Robot is not worth it. I expected to have a fun, small and charming little puzzle game, but it isn't very well executed. It has slow combat that can easily get you killed in, basic puzzles that aren't too hard to solve, boring bosses, a strange effect over their videos where it makes me wig out, and a very, very annoying maze. But it isn't all bad news. The look of the game is fairly nice. I like the art style and I like the design of the robot, and I really liked the levels that you get to explore. I also love the hand-drawn art that's on the cover of this game. It's what drew me to it in the first place, but it isn't enough to save the game. I hope they make a sequel to this one day and address all the issues that I've brought up, because there is a nice game waiting under the surface here. It just needs more polish. So guys, tell me what you thought about The Girl and the Robot. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you get drawn into the art style as well? Is that what made you pick it up? Because that's what made me pick it up. Also, did you find the puzzles particularly hard or anything? Because I found the game to be fairly easy, but I just want to know what other people experienced. So guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!